And now it's time to introduce our last speaker for this session, the brilliant Professor Kirsi Salonen from the University of Turku is going to tell you about new services for medieval historians.
Yes, hello to everybody. My name is Kirsi Salonen. I am professor of history in the Finnish University in Turku, which is about 200 kilometers westward from here. And I am myself medievalist. I have some experience in working archives, but I am mainly my presentation is now from the point of view of a user. Thank you for inviting me here to talk about the medieval things and what the National Archives are doing regarding the services for medieval historians. It is a pleasure to be here, and it is also an honor to be able of speaking here. As a historian, I don't start from the early Romans, but I take a little bit backwards the history of what kind of services there is now, so we go a little bit backwards. And I start because I don't know from which countries everybody are coming, but I suppose there are very different source situations in different countries in the world regarding the Middle Ages. And Finland is one of the countries where we have very little medieval sources survived. And there are practically two reasons. One is that the literal tradition, to put anything written on paper or parchment, that came extremely late to Finland regarding Central Europe or Southern Europe or any other parts of Europe almost. And we can talk about the real written culture in Finland from late 13th century, mid 13th century onwards. Before that, there is practically, or what there has possibly been, is all disappeared. So we have very few medieval sources in Finland. I think we could count almost in the two hands the number of original medieval letters that we still have preserved in Finland. Well, there is a little bit more than 100, but we are talking about a really small amount of material. The late literary tradition is one reason for it, and of course, a lot of medieval written down. The archives of the local ecclesiastical things like the Turku Cathedral Chapter or the Turku Bishop, they are almost all destroyed. And there is very little left. There is something in the collections of the National Archives and something in the collections of the National Library of Finland, but as said, these are very small collections. And that means if one wants to study the medieval history of Finland, we have to go somewhere else to look for the sources. We can't find enough material in Finland to be able of creating any kind of picture. And we have here in particular three extremely important archives. We have the Swedish National Archives, Finland has been part of Sweden until 1809, which means that we have a long common history, and therefore also the Swedish archival collections are extremely important for the Finnish medievalists. Another one is the papal archives. Finland was part of the Catholic Church, which means that there are a lot of Finnish cases handled in the papal curia, and therefore also the papal archives have a lot of documentation concerning Finland. I myself have been working over 10 years with the material in the Vatican archives, and that is my specialty. And then we have the neighboring countries. The Tallinn Town Archives has a lot of material regarding medieval Finland, Gdansk, Lübeck, also other Swedish towns have something. But the problem has always been that these archives, they are abroad, and the scholars should have the travel grants or time to go and sit longer time in the foreign archives. And that has been a big problem. And the only solution for that has been editing the medieval sources. They are so few, they are less than 10,000 documents or even mentionings about Finns or Finland or the Turku diocese in the Middle Ages, so that it has been possible to edit all these documents. And the source edition program that started with the then state archivist Reinhold Hausen, you can see his picture over there, and it was very much part of the nation building in the late 19th century, early 20th century. Finland was at that time part of Russia, and then became independent 1917, and publishing the Finnish sources was part of this, that okay, we are Finns, we want to create a history for Finland, and of course it was very important to create it from the beginning, which means from the Middle Ages. And because Finland wanted to get away from the Russian government, it was also very important to create to Finland a past that we could show that we are part of the Western world, we are part of the Catholic Church instead of the Orthodox Church. We have been longer time part of the Swedish realm than the Russian Empire, and therefore sort of special emphasis on the old history was put in the publishing of these source editions. And Reinhold Hausen, I don't know how he could have time for doing everything like that. He must have had at least 30 hours in each day and 9 days in each week, because he has done these 4 big publication series regarding the Finnish older history. There is Bidrag Finlands Historia, which is documents from the 16th century. There are 5 relatively thick volumes. He published the most important medieval manuscript, which is preserved from the Turku Cathedral chapter, Registrum Ecclesiae Aboensis. It is the copybook of the cathedral. He published 1 volume about the medieval seals, Finlands medeltidssigill. And what we are talking today is the last, but absolutely not the least, for medievalist, 8 thick volumes about medieval charters regarding Finland. And these 8 volumes, they cover all the documentation known by the 1935 that regarded Finns or the modern Finnish territory in the Middle Ages. And there are actually less than 9,000 documents in this series edited. So it is all we have left. And Hausen, of course, he was doing a lot of edition here in Finland with the documents we had, but he has also used the help of colleagues in different countries. There were Scandinavian researchers sent to the Vatican archives. Hausen has had their notes in his disposal. He has been using sort of material from the different archives in the Baltic Sea area, and has produced this huge, massive work for which we are eternally grateful for him. I suppose there is no other country in the world where all medieval documentation, or practically all medieval documentation, is actually edited and accessible to scholars. And here is now just to show you what is the result of Hausen's editions. Here is one opening of his source edition. They are all ordered chronologically, so it is very easy to search. If one wants to know what happened in a certain year, you just open the volumes there and start looking at. Hausen also provided a short summary regest of each document, and that is written in sort of early 20th century Swedish, and nowadays not all Finnish scholars can anymore Swedish, so there has been a little bit complaining that they should also be translated into Finnish, but we come to that a little bit later. Then Hausen has provided the signum and the provenience of all the original documents if somebody wants to go to the archives to look at them. And finally, then comes the text edition if the document was unedited. If it instead was already edited somewhere else, for example by the Swedes or the Estonian people, then there is only a reference to the edition. But this is what Hausen managed to publish in these 8 volumes. In the late 90s, the scholars started talking, actually already in early 1990s, but nothing happened. The Finnish medievalists started to talk that actually this edition of Hausen, that was quite outdated in many ways. First of all, it included a lot of errors, and it is stupid that everybody knows that, okay, there is an error and there is an error and this and this, and people started sort of, yeah, can one actually anymore trust in Hausen's editions? But actually the worst problem, it was not the quality, but it was totally impossible to get hold of any copies anymore, because I think the Finnish National Archives sent the last entire copy of the whole series to the Vatican Archives in 1990. I think it was 7 or 8, I can't remember which year. And it was impossible to get the volumes anymore, since they were so sold out. So we started talking that, okay, now there is time to do something modern, put all these editions online, make some kind of searchable database. And the National Archive made a small group of scholars who started planning it. We got financing from the Finnish Cultural Foundation. It is a private foundation supporting this kind of cultural things, and we actually managed to get the documents available for everybody. The project had very fine goals that we would make a modern digital edition of the material printed by Hausen. We would also add new material. There had been, meanwhile, after 1935, the publishing of the last volume in the series, there have come a lot of documentation that, okay, yeah, these are not in Hausen's edition, so we wanted to add also that material. Plus, we wanted to correct these errors what Hausen had in the edition. And here you can see now what we actually succeeded in doing. A lot of things. There is further up is the starting page of the homepage, so-called Diplomatarium Fennicum. And it was possible also then to search the documents. It is not, according to the modern standards, very advanced search, but one could search with the date and search with the FMU numbers and also some kind of text search. And that is how far the project got. Here you can see just one page. Here is what is below is what stands in Hausen's edition, and further up is what we then got into the digital edition. And from our point of view as scholars, it was of course a little bit disappointment that it was just the sort of visual copy of what was in Hausen's edition, but we did not have time or money to do any adding of new material or even not really correcting the Hausen's errors. So this time the project, we achieved a lot, we got everything online, so now it was again available for everybody, but we did not have time and money to correct all the mistakes. And we went on about 15 years with this edition until we started talking, and the National Archives has been extremely active in this, that okay, now we have to do something with this old Diplomatarium Fennicum database, we would need a new version of it. And we succeeded in getting financing from another Finnish private foundation, the Kone Foundation. And the idea behind the project is that, first of all, technically the old Diplomatarium Fennicum database was very outdated. There were some of the search things that actually did not work anymore. And it was necessary to get all this information in a new modern technological needs, so that one could use it as a mobile phone app or something like that, not only with the old-fashioned computer thing. And the second sort of big thing behind that, now this documentation was only actually usable for historians because the level or the quality of Hausen's editions, they did not meet anymore with the sort of standards, whatever, for example, if somebody is researching the Old Swedish language or something like that, for the linguists, this kind of database and that material, it was absolutely not usable. So we wanted to make a new database, again, which would be modern, it would be multifunctional. We wanted to include this time the new sources that last time we could not add to the database. We wanted to correct the errors. And the fourth thing was very important, that now we want to take in also things that would help the linguists and other disciplines also than only history. And what came out actually very quickly, only in few years, the technicians here in the National Archive managed to create a new databases that is actually working much better. It is now, we call it Diplomatarium Fennicum II, but actually it just carries the same name, Diplomatarium Fennicum, in the database. It is now working also, at least in a beta version already in English, so it is also possible that foreign scholars can use this. Earlier when everything was in Finnish or Swedish, it was perhaps not so useful, for example, Germans or Englishmen or Frenchmen who can't Finnish or Swedish. But now it should be 3 languages, the 2 official languages of Finland, Finnish and Swedish, and English for foreign users. And instead of the old search function where one could search with the old Diplomatarium old number or the data or some text search, we have now much better search possibilities. We have the old 3, one can also search in different languages, one can search only in regest, in the text editions, in translations, or whatsoever. There is also issuer, issuing place, one can search according to the archival provenance, one can search according to the source publication, and we don't know, maybe still in future comes new features here, but this is what is available at the moment. So this is much more advanced than the old version used to be. And here you can see how, when one has searched with a number, for example, this is now 4355, the document, and what you can see here, there are different kind of features. First comes the number, the Diplomatarium Fennicum number comes here. Then we have the issuing date of the letter, the place of issue of the document, and here we have also the language. It can be Latin, it can be Swedish, it can be Middle Low German, it can be in sometimes Russian. There are more possibilities. No Finnish, because the first Finnish documents actually, they come only from the 16th century. So we don't have any documents, medieval documents in Finnish in Finland. And below these key things, we have the author of the document, and also the map function, I think, is now possible to use it so one can see where in the map is the place of issue. Maybe all the small Finnish place names are not familiar for everybody, and the map function is actually very, very useful. Then below that comes the same small summary, as it is actually in most cases, it is still the same as in Hausen, but we are working with these to make it into modern Swedish, modern Finnish, and perhaps if we get money from somewhere, perhaps even in English. And then below this, we have different kind of layers, and this is now the sort of really good new feature in using this. When clicking from here in these 3 arrows, one gets out a PDF form of what was in the Hausen's edition. This document comes from the original is in the town archives in Tallinn, and clicking here one can get then to the source more practically. There are also pictures available of the documents, and here below, if the document is edited somewhere or there is reference somewhere, there could be much more of these different kind of openings. But here you can get an idea that we have actually also the different kind of edition layers. We have the pictures. We try to get in all the possible information about the documents that is available, because that can be helpful for scholars in different ways. And then I come to the conclusions. What can the National Archives now offer for us medievalists? It is a wonderful, well-done database that is searchable in many different ways and which also works. Some of the features are still in beta version, but it is totally functional, and at least what I have used it has really functioned. The new database has corrected all the problems with the old Diplomatarium version. There is still a lot of things to do now in these years. What we have done, it has mainly been the work with the database, making it function. We have added some documents in it. What would I say? I don't know actually the exact number, but about 200 documents, which is already quite a considerable amount of documents. And there are coming new documents all the time when just the scholars find something somewhere and then get it editing. We are also updating, as I said, the reges or the summaries, that they are not only in the old Hausen like Swedish, but they would be in Finnish, which would be much more easier, for example, school kids to use. We are trying to get also sort of this into the teaching system. The teachers could take this up when they are talking about the Finnish medieval history in schools, for example, or university teachers like myself can use this much more easily when it is available in more languages. There are also the database system. I know nothing about sort of IT technology, so I can't answer you, but it is made in the sense that it can be connected to different kind of search machines. There can be added new kind of search functions if possible. And the most important is the last point, which we have not yet got very far, but we are also now want to make the corrections to the content, correct all the mistakes. We are not very far away with it at the time, but the project is continuing, so we hope that in 10-20 years we would actually have new editions of all the about 9,000 documents and all modern scientific editions. But there is, of course, as we are talking, in the humanist in archive science, there is always the problem of financing. Where can we find, first of all, the people who have time to do it, and secondly, the money to do it? But we are working with it, and since we have as a cooperation partner the Finnish National Archives, it should not be that difficult in Finland to get financing for this kind of important project. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.